Week one of spring football is in the books, and there's plenty to talk about, plenty of standouts, and Miami gets a new commitment. It's a Blue Monday on the Storm Tracker podcast.
You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, Canes family, to the Storm Tracker podcast. Marcus Benjamin here representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Make sure you subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com, for free. Use the promo code Miami30 and also subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County. Spring football, week one in the books. We had some standouts here and there, maybe some surprises, and we also had a commit from Armwood. Jaelen Waters commit to the Miami Hurricanes as well. And to talk about it all, I've got Larry Blustein, longtime South Florida reporter, to talk to us about spring football as well as recruiting as well. Thanks for joining me again, Larry.
Anytime, Marcus. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Busy time. This month is going to be kind of busy.
Yeah, it's the busy time of the year here in the spring. Spring football is well underway, as well as recruits visiting pretty much weekly. We're on spring break this week. The University of Miami is, but the following weeks, Miami will have spring football practice as well as recruits continuing to visit. But Blue, you've been on the road, this week. And, we'll dive into, what you've seen on the road as far as, wrestling is concerned. Of a Miami target came home with some hardware. But Miami, like I mentioned earlier, landed a 4-star defensive back in Jaelen Waters. Outstanding talent. What do you think of Miami landing the 4-star 2026 DB from Armwood?
Yeah, well, he's a really good football player and a really good talent. And I know that, here's a guy who kind of was leading for Florida for a while, obvious reasons. And the guy who was pretty much uncovering him from the beginning is now a Hurricane coach. So it only made sense, that somebody – and that's the thing about recruiting, Marcus, that a lot of people have to understand. It's about familiarity. It's about being comfortable, with a lot of these coaches. And he felt comfortable with the coaches, and then obviously being in this system where he has a chance because it's been a position of need for the last 3 years for Miami that, he can come in and get right in the mix, when he gets an opportunity to get on campus, and at least, will advance in a program that, has a solid system going now with some of the not only the recruits, but also, some of the players that they brought in through the portal. So, he's very athletic, great size. So I had an opportunity to watch him pretty much from the beginning of his career, sort of like Gerard Pringle, had a lot of 7-on-7s. And, Armwood's huge, and, a lot of those programs are huge in off-season 7-on-7s, which gives them, it's in the simulation. It's not going to be, something that's going to, that guy can play 7-on-7, so he's going to translate. But you could tell a lot about a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned 7-on-7 because that's kind of the setting that I've seen him in the most, playing for Raw Miami. And I just think he's just very crafty, really good balance,
right.
And he has good recovery speed as well. And he's a dog, he's got that dog mentality. So really, really good find for the Miami Hurricanes. And you can see more on Waters as our guy Steve-O broke down his film on CanesCounty.com. Be sure to check that out. But Blue, like I mentioned earlier, you have been on the road and you got to see one of the Miami targets wrestle over the past few days, Ryan Miret. This guy, Miami is looking at pretty strongly as an inferior offensive lineman. and from what I understand, he came home with the state title. So tell me about Ryan Miret and what he could be for the Miami Hurricanes 2026 class.
Got away from him last year. He as a sophomore, he lost in the semifinals and double overtime to the kid who eventually won it. And I think that's the one thing that he kind of swore this year, that he'd come back and he'd approach it a little bit differently. Now, he didn't wrestle as much as some of the other, some of these wrestlers come in with 60 matches. He just had 26, 27, which meant most of his wrestling was in the latter part of the season, the dual championships and, a lot of the districts, the region, the counties, because he was on recruiting visits, a lot of the other time during the weekend. So extremely athletic. I kind of question whether he's going to hold this weight for another year. I know he wants to come back and do it again, but I kind of said, hey, listen, you're cutting now to get to 285. He's like 290, 291. He's got hardly any fat. Somebody who started 2 years ago on a program, where he learned a lot. 2 years ago, he's only 6'1.5", 235 pounds. So it shows you how much he's grown. Great offensive lineman, played a lot of defense, which kind of shows you his athleticism. Yeah. Very intelligent kid, 4.4 GPA, but you would expect that. His dad being a principal, of Southridge. So, and I've known the family for a lot of years, kind of watched Ryan grow up a little bit. And saw him on the football field and was really, really surprised at how technically sound he is. And obviously he loves it here. I think when he got to Miami offered that, even though he's been to a lot of different places, and rightfully so, you got to visit, you got to see other places. But I think he was really kind of just overjoyed with the opportunity to get a commitment, because if you watch some of his early pictures when he was a kid, he had stuff on, and he used to go with his dad being a big fan of Miami. So I think it's a better chance that Miami has a kid like that, brings him on campus. He's only going to get stronger. Like I said, he's got no fat on him, and he's 285 pounds or 287. They give you the 2-pound weight allowance. And like I said, technically on the football field, extremely sound, great feet, strong upper body. He's the type of guy you bring in, and he makes some moves, and he reminds me of a guy Miami had way back in the day by the name of Greg Riccozzi, although Greg went on to play center and then went to the Cleveland Browns. Same body type, 6'4.5", 6'5", 280, 285, close to 300 range, great feet, great, very athletic type of player. So, I think Miami's got Miami keeps on him. I think they'll get a commitment probably before the summer.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good ad for the Miami Hurricanes. He kind of fits the mold of what Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal want on that offensive line. Big guy for an interior guy. You said well over 200 pounds, no body fat on, but he's 6'4", this guy.
Yeah.
So, usually centers are not that tall. So it's a really good prospect that Miami could add to its 2026 class.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Miami had a bunch of players kind of go through Coral Gables and the University of Miami campus over the week. Spring football is of course in full swing right now. 3 practices in. Blue, I got to see, the team and see them practice, for the 10 minutes that we're out there. But I did get to see a lot of the players in action, including some local talent that are really kind of making waves that you and I are both very familiar with, like Chris Ewald. I think probably is the biggest surprise of just, how much of an impact he's making so far. I mean, this is a guy who was just in high school a couple of months ago. And, the thing about corners too, Blue, is like sometimes it's hard to evaluate them if they're not thrown to a lot.
Sure.
And I think Chris was not thrown to much last season as opposed to previous seasons, so you didn't really kind of see him in action much. But when I watched him in practice, he's kind of leading some of the drills at safety, Blue. So what do you think about his potential and him possibly competing for the safety spot at Miami?
You bring up a great point about it. Let's remember, though, as a 10th grader, he was committed to Michigan. So it's not like somebody had just came in and magically was dropped off in the middle of the field. The only question mark after his sophomore year going into his junior year was he going to get any bigger? And last year, ironically, I believe it was at the Rivals camp at St. Thomas, where I looked at him and I said, damn. I mean, I didn't even know that was him. He got bigger, got 2, 3, 4 inches taller. He's ultra athletic. I mean, he played, you talk about 7-on-7. He played in the off season, for a really good program, DEFCON, with his dad last year. But he really this year showed me quite a bit. And I told him, I says, I was waiting. I even said I was waiting for you to grow, and he laughed. But he did. And, like I said, great family, great support system, has been at this level. If you remember, he played all the way back in the day with Zaquan Patterson when they played at the True Prep Academy that year when he was like he was like 8th grade or 9th grade, and they had a ton of talent on that team too. So he's climbed the ladder. He's a guy that I think that over the next couple of years is going to be really, really sensational for this program. And another kid with grades. Let me tell you something. People could laugh it off or wave it off when I say, well, that kid's got 3.9 or he's got a 4.0. Don't, because that shows the discipline he has, to achieve in the classroom, to kind of be like an enhancement. So I love kids who have a high, who achieve highly in the classroom too.
Yeah, he's definitely a smart kid. Just a great overall prospect.
Yeah.
Reminds me a little bit of Earl Little Jr.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, as far as like his technical prowess. He's just very technical, very sound. And like you said, if he continues to build more girth to his body,
right,
sky's the limit for him. And obviously, Miami thinks he can be a solid safety as well, which I didn't quite see coming. I thought he was just more going to be like a boundary corner. But yeah, he's definitely showing versatility. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the other standouts for me, or the other standout for me that I do want to mention, is the outstanding freshman wide receiver Malachi Toney. I mean, this guy, what else can you say about him? He basically put the team on his back to win a state title, and now he's competing. Looks like he's legitimately competing for playing time at the University of Miami. Great route runner, can get you the yards after the catch, and it seems like he can have that just breakaway ability once he gets the football in his hands. What do you think are his chances of actually starting? Either in the spring or in the fall. What do you expect from Toney?
Well, it's going to be a lot of competition for the position. Obviously, you lose somebody who's somebody who filled that role over the last 3+ years pretty well, and now you got to look. But I think where he makes the most impact is as a return specialist. This is somebody who knows how to return the football. He's just not that 4.37 kid. You see, taking no shots at Chris Johnson. But I always said this. Chris Johnson is a classic example of you could be as fast as you want, but not be a great kick returner. And that's the one thing where Malachi Toney has always been really, really good. And if you remember, this is a kid, so it shouldn't be much of a surprise that at the age of 14, in his very, very, very first varsity game on national television, caught over 100 yards and 3 touchdown passes. And, so he's got ice water in his vein from the beginning.
Yes.
A really good kid. He's a high achiever. And you talk about somebody who is not satisfied. From what I understand is he stays after and works after they've showered, and he comes back and watches film, and that has a lot of Xavier Restrepo all over it. And I remember the first time that I talked to Mario Cristobal when he arrived about Xavier Restrepo, and he says, I can't get the damn kid out the damn facility. I mean, he wants to just keep coming back. He wants to run, and he wants to lift weights, and he wants – you know what? What's wrong with that, Marcus? At the end of the day, you got Malachi Tony, who is younger than a lot of the other players, and he's definitely somebody you're not parking in the garage. You're using him.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I saw from him in spring practice, I really feel like he can be an impact player in year one, which is saying a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, because this wide receiver room, I think, has a lot of talent in it. Just from what we've seen, Chance Robinson is not even, in the mix as of yet, but he might be towards the end of the spring. So add him as well, and also C.J. Daniels, the transfer from LSU.
Yeah.
We haven't yet seen him as well. So I think Carson Beck and company will have plenty to use out on the field. As far as playmakers are concerned.
Sure.
Yeah. So those are some of the freshmen for me that are kind of standing out. I do want to mention one other player too, that is kind of standing out as far as freshmen is concerned. And I think Amari Wallace is like he's making an impact. I mean, this guy, he's just very instinctive when it comes to just playing football, and he just knows how to play football really well. And he's out there wearing 26 too, Blue.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that number is very, sacred. Let's say in Miami Hurricanes football lore, the old number of the late great Sean Taylor. But it seems like Wallace is living up to expectations after a major injury.
That's what I was going to say. Let's go back 8 months ago, and there's people that kind of expected him maybe never to play again. Yeah. The injury was so severe, compound fracture. But I'll tell you what, I watched him during the season from the sideline, and he was always into things, at Central, trying to help the other defensive backs. And every time I saw him, he got bigger, and he's got stronger, and he got better and better. And that's the one thing I said to him towards the end of the season. I said, how you been? He goes, no more crutches. So I'll tell you what, don't be surprised if he sneaks his head in there, like in that Notre Dame game right away, because he's got that type of talent. This is the way I feel, and I've always felt this way. If you're going to wear a damn uniform, you might as well use it. I mean, if these kids are, I know there's a lot of guys that have a lot, you throw them in against a Notre Dame, it's a whole lot different than going against Florida A&M or Ball State or, Bethune-Cookman. But at the same time, if he's got talent, he's got talent. I think Miami saw that last year with a couple of the players, especially at the beginning of the year when you had a freshman cornerback start in the very first game against the Florida Gators and O.J. Frederick. So I think he's got that type of ability. I think he's a little bit more athletic, and he's really rangy. So that kind of adds up. And I think that in this freshman class, you have some guys that have an opportunity, to do some special things. And I think that Amari is one of those guys. And, there was a reason why a lot of people deemed him a 5-star, after his junior year.
Yeah, you definitely see the talent there. Miami's definitely upgraded their defensive back room kind of overall. And, with Zaquan Patterson, looks like he hasn't been in spring as well. You add him to the mix, and you already have Xavier Lucas, who looks great out there, Blue. And then you've also, of course, got O.J. Frederick, as you mentioned. Jadice Richards still on this squad.
And
as
the
well.
Poiser kid, too, from what I heard, the kid from Jacksonville State has looked like a man-child, and rightfully so, because if you watch his film back from last year, you could see that this kid, all he needed was to have some people around him, and as you stated, Miami's gone that direction. I mean, let's look back 3 years ago when Miami's Achilles heel, probably the worst part on the team was the offensive line. Now they're arguably one of the best in the ACC, if not one of the best in the country. So if you concentrate on it like they have, and especially, adding somebody, a defensive coordinator that just is relentless and won't let up, and then the defensive back is familiar with the scheme that they're running. I think we're going to see a huge difference in the defenses this year, especially because of the fact that and we took shots last year, and obviously, rightfully so when you're giving up 1 million yards a game. I mean, your offense had to freaking score 80 for you to win. But that being said, I think that you take a look, Marcus, at a defensive unit like this, and your front seven has a lot to say about it. If you remember in the first couple of games against Florida and then Ball State and Florida A&M, I mean, there were sacks, there was pressure, front seven, but then all of a sudden that Virginia Tech game rolled around, and this defense kind of went south after that. So,
Yeah.
And I think that having a Mesidor back in the mix and a Bain and guys who have some experience, still the linebacking core is going to be a question because you're looking last year where Mawanoa regressed, and, people could say anything they want, but he did. And we watched every single game. So I saw Wesley didn't have the greatest year either last year. So it's going to have to be him. I think Popo's got an opportunity to do some really good things at Gary because of the fact that he was one of those guys that last year when they stuck him in, he made plays.
Yeah.
But the front seven's got to really perform, and then we'll see that defensive secondary shine the way that you and I are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great segue to my next question, which is basically guys that have been here, guys that have been here that are looking to kind of take that next step in their development. I'm going to, name some guys that I expect to kind of take the next step. And from what I hear from coaches and from what I've seen, I think these guys really have a chance to make an impact here in the spring and the fall. Justin Scott, he's looked really good. Armando Blunt. I mean, the kid's just 18 years old, and he's already, a man-child. If there was ever a definition of a man-child, that's Armando Blunt.
Yeah.
You also, of course, mentioned Wesley and Popo, who I imagine are going to be your two starting linebackers. And then, you got guys on the offensive line that you kind of are hoping to kind of step up in a Ryan Rodriguez and a Markel Bell. These guys are projected to be starting on the offensive line, so you kind of want to take the next step. And then there's Ray and JoJo. These two guys have been with the program, for at least a year or so, especially with Ray's case. You kind of expect those guys to kind of step up as well. As far as the players that are already on, the non-freshmen, who do you expect to really kind of step up this spring and really kind of make a name for themselves?
Well, I mentioned one because I think that having him back, he's not a guy that would be a surprise, but somebody that was hurt a lot last year, and that's Akeem Mesidor. I mean, this guy, Marcus, I think he is a heart and soul type of player. Because if you look back when he was healthy and he performed, the defensive unit was a lot better. And I think that he has an opportunity to make a huge impact. And obviously a guy that you and I have talked about in the past, who I think may be as good athlete or better athlete, is old number 9, Elijah. And I'm telling you, he's he's a kid that they could stick in a billion different places on that team. And I think that's important. People have to understand. So, yeah, there's a couple of kids, but I think that, you look at Elijah Lofton as being one. You look, obviously, Akeem Messidor as being one. Guys that have, that I think that Elijah Lofton becomes pretty much one of those guys that's going to be used in so many different positions. I mean, as a tight end, obviously, as a receiver, as a running back, kid could throw the ball 70 yards in the air, so he could be a wildcat quarterback. And I mean, I'm looking at a lot of these guys to be difference makers, and you need that from your seniors, or from your guys who have played, quite a bit. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see, who, like you said, who could step up for this team. This spring is going to be huge, because there's going to be a lot of position, as you already seen, a lot of positions that are going to need to be won. And I'm looking forward to this. See what happens, the rest of the way. Kind of funky that they have that week, but they're not the only one that has a week and then a week off. I mean, they start and then they have the week off. It's kind of crazy, but whatever it is, it is.
Right, exactly. And lastly, before I let you go, I want to talk about just players that you kind of want to see make progress from last year. Either like they were a highly touted type of guy, you didn't really kind of see maybe much of them from last season, but you kind of want to see them make progress. And I'll name a few for me, like Marquise Lightfoot. This guy was a 5-star at some point on certain sites. I believe Rivals had him as a 5-star by the end of the cycle. He was injured in his senior year, so that's why he didn't get a lot of attention, I guess you could say, until he made an impact in the All-American game at the end of the year. So that's what I want to see make some progress. Ray Joseph, this is also another guy I'm hoping to see make some progress as well. And Zaquan Patterson, I kind of want to see him kind of take the next step in his development as well. I believe those are the type of guys you kind of need to kind of make progress. I think it goes without saying that Jordan Lyle is going to be, an impact player. I feel JoJo Trader is also going to be an impact player as well. You mentioned Elijah Lofton as well. But those are some of the players for me that you kind of want to see make that progress. Booker Pickett is another one that you kind of want to see take that next step in his development.
Yeah.
Any players for you that you feel like you need to make progress here?
Well, you got a bunch of offensive linemen that you like Matthew McCoy and Inez Cooper, and as you mentioned, Ryan Rodriguez and players like that have an opportunity. Markel Bell, who showed flashes of brilliance. A lot of times last year, see what James Brockermeyer does at the center spot, even though we didn't get a chance to see them. I mean, I think on the offensive line, those are guys that have an opportunity to come back. I mean, we know Francis Mauanoa could do what he's doing, and Tommy Kinsler's another guy. So we talk about the offensive line. Huh?
Samson Okunlola.
Yes, that's another one. So you talk about the offensive line as being the strength, and when you have, guys like we mentioned, and Markel Bell and Samson Okunola and Ryan Rodriguez and Matthew McCoy and player Inez Cooper and players like that, you want them to continue to rise, above what they do. Jordan Lyle's another guy that will have an opportunity from day one to be a guy who could get 13, 14, 1,500 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
We saw it. He's got that speed. You do have, a guy like Mark Fletcher, who's a big back, big power back. But I think that somebody like Jordan Lyle could take that thing from 20 to the end zone in no time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Larry Blustein, once again, joining me here on the Storm Tracker podcast. Appreciate you as always on this Blue Monday. And, hopefully we'll see each other again. Are you going to Are you planning on going down to Coral Gables for a practice?
Yeah. And we'll get there in the next week or so when they'll have a scrimmage in 2 weeks, I believe. I'll come on down for that. Also, one other player that I want to see. I think that he has an opportunity. Actually, two players. Malik Bryant, who kind of showed,
Yes, I want to mention him too.
Yeah, he's grown a lot. And Cam Pruitt. I mean, I thought Cam Pruitt had some really good games last year. He's very instinctful, and he's always around the ball. He'll hit you, and you get guys like that. And with Popo, and we'll see if Chase Smith does anything. Yeah. But those are the guys, and I'll definitely be down there. I'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks at the Rivals camp, which is we're looking forward to that as well. Pick up maybe a couple of other kids who didn't shine. Although the Under Armour combines, the one up that I went to in Orlando and the one here, certainly showed off some talent.
Yeah, for sure. Rivals camp will be the last weekend of the month here in March, where a bunch of local talent will get to see.
Yeah.
And there's usually a star or two that kind of pops out from that camp. So looking forward to that as well.
Yeah.
Once again, Larry Blustein joining me here on the Storm Tracker podcast. That's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast on this episode. Thanks for joining me once again, Larry, and hopefully I'll see you again soon on a Blue Monday.
Good stuff. Thanks, Marcus.
I appreciate it. Like I said, that's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com, for free. Use the promo code of Miami30, and also subscribe to this website, or a YouTube channel, rather, live from Canes County. Until the next episode.